And we'll treat you very kindly if you come close to us. And you can also leave if you need, and no one will look bad at you. I'm extremely honored and grateful for this very positive reception and for all of you for being here. This is such a nerdy subject. And just seeing how we share nerdy passions is very touching because it gives a sense of possibility and a sense of belief in a common good and in ideas that we cherish very much and we want to continue supporting. And exactly because of this sense of being together and feeling that there is something worth supporting. Sorry, I'm trying to... I was told to speak as close as possible to the microphone, and I'm measuring how close is close. I'm going to start a little bit like your cell phone when you haven't still opened your eyes very well, but you're already turned on and beeps with not very happy news. But then I will move on to some more hopeful ideas, and I'm not going to take long. Well, this encounter like this and the ones we are going to have tomorrow are particularly meaningful because we are in a complex moment. Just this week, while we started gathering and coming here, there were the news that the School of Visual Arts in Chicago has radically reduced the team of Video Data Bank, which is an incredible institution created in 1974 to give support to the work of, at the time, only female artists through a series of interviews that had been made with them to try to compensate for their underrepresentation. And right now, Video Data Bank is not knowing what is going to happen to the more than 6,000 works that they've been archiving, preserving, and helping distribute. Just last night, I was having a very interesting, or I actually had two very interesting conversations with two people affiliated to, let's say, the Netherlands and Belgium, and we were speaking about the unknown state in which Lima, which is an entity also for the preservation, archive, conservation of artist video that was created in 2013, coming from the merging of important Dutch initiatives such as Montevideo, and how Lima is also going through a quite complex economic situation and also not knowing how to move ahead. And these news, we know them, we've been hearing them. We know what's happening with MUCA. We know how public institutions in particular, and within the European context in which we are right now, are struggling. And it's clear that almost like a heartbeat where there's a moment of expansion and a moment of contraction, that we are going through a moment of contraction. And I think it's really important to understand how to continue working together, existing, supporting one another, and inventing ways that allow us to pursue with a circuit that we love, that we care for, that we support, and to resist, to avoid extinction somehow. I think it's a matter of just inventing and coming up with other ways of being together. And it seems maybe a little bit odd to start this kind of depressing subject while being here and speaking about something that is so meaningful and so important, but also so joyful and creative as exhibitions and biennials and the role that they may play to foster, to incentivize, to support the work of of artists who are working with moving images. But the reason why I think it's particularly also relevant to bring this here as an introduction is that these formats, which in themselves are at the core of the ways in which we conceive art in its existence, in its circulation, in the possibility to share ideas, they're also formats that have continuously inventing their own ways of existing and their own ways of coexisting and of sharing between themselves with other institutions. And as such, I believe it's also interesting to look at very specific case studies of highly skilled professionals who are here with us to reflect a little bit more on how we can work together, imagine together, suffer together as well, but also build something that stays. And as such, I think that these formats matter now, not only as a place to commission, as I mentioned, and support individual artists, but also thinking of ways of trans-institutional exchange, ways of bringing together public and private funding, ways of co-commissioning and co-producing, in which we can think about shared commissioning funds, cycles across partner institutions, anchor hosts for premieres, and then ripples that continue reverberating these works across different places and channels. Thinking about ways in which venues can exist, exhibitions can exist across venues, no? With circulating chapters, with shared costs, with local variations and programs. Or imagining modalities of regional and local sharing of technical infrastructures and know-how. No? How could we imagine cooperatives for materials rather than going to rental companies? And I hope the technicians here don't cut my microphone right now. With shared maintenance agreements and storage consorts, for instance. And also to share research and knowledge platforms through co-authored research and shared working groups, no? Or imagining infrastructural alliances through the creation of professional gatherings that focus on very practical issues, which is a little bit what we're trying to do here. Co-curated programs across borders, in which both presentations but also responsibilities are shared, coordinated modes of fundraising and advocacy and lobbying, I would say, digital shared platforms, and creating ethical baselines for fees, contracts, offers to artists, and shared standards on copyright, on licensing, on preservation, and also collective communication campaigns. I mean, these are some proposals that I was thinking about, or ways in which we can actually work together. And I don't think I'm inventing the wheel, but I think what we're going to hear today is exactly some ideas and experiences that touch upon some of these possibilities. So yes, thank you so much. I'm not going to introduce our speakers, first because I don't think they need an introduction. Second, because they've been very nicely introduced in the booklet that you probably have. And thirdly, because there's always a bit embarrassment when someone is talking about you just next to you and telling how incredible you are. We're going to start with Laura Huertas Millán. We're going to go this way, actually. So yes, thank you so much, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Filipa. Hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking you, Filipa, Itania, Emilio, and all the technical team, the Loop team, for having me today. I'm really excited to be sharing this space with you and having these important conversations. And I wanted to especially thank the team for the care and responsiveness as I recover from being sick. I really appreciate it a lot. And I wanted to thank you for mentioning as well Video Data Bank. If any of you want to get involved, you can come and speak to me afterwards, and I'll share some resources to add your voice to the support. So my name is Laura Huertas Millán. I'm a French and Colombian filmmaker and artist, and I approach cinema as an oniric, diasporic, and multicultural medium. Across the past 20 years, I've developed a hybrid practice grounded in historical inquiry and cinematic fabulation. I'm interested in ecological resistances, the legacies of cultural dissidents in Latin America, and strategies to exit coloniality. I've invented a modular approach to storytelling that encompasses films, moving image, installations, writing, pedagogy, and expanded media. My projects are rooted in real-life contexts and long-term collaborations, but my work claims fiction as an emancipatory tool. I build cinematic altered states, sites of healing and commonality, and I place imagination with I have a very high respect for imagination, which for me is a very important political treasure. My work... Maybe it's me, okay. My work circulates between cinema festival, biennials, and art institutions, and each one of these context frames receives and discusses the work differently. So I'm going to speak a little bit about each one of these platforms and models and share from my own experience and from my some very subjective takes. I would like to start with festivals. So for me, cinema is a telescope. It amplifies micro-events. It requires a contained, subtle form of expression, and it's an invitation to suspend time and heighten the senses. So experiencing that in a full theater, as it happens in good festivals, is electrifying. Because not only festivals offer technical stability, they have dark rooms, excellent sound, DCP, and 5.1 projections, and your film looks the same everywhere, which is a really big relief. And having the energy of the room, an audience engaging with your work over a premiere, these are moments that I cherish very much. I particularly enjoy Q&As. People come to festivals as much to watch films as to speak about them. And these Q&As, they can be sometimes confrontational, generous, scary. Sometimes they are illuminating. Sometimes it's really heated. And sometimes it's all at once. So I really like this energy of a democratic debate. And they offer a direct contact with large audiences. Also, festivals are celebrations of collective practices. I'm sharing these images because I was struck by how many people are in each image, from the moment you present the film to the audience receiving to the filmmakers next to you presenting. So I really like this component of a collectivity that is always centered and put forward. I love film festivals, I need to say it, but they are also idiosyncratic, really built for cinephiles. You need to be able to sit for long stretches of time. So I'm talking about 6 to 8 hours per day in a dark room, just doing that, sometimes sleeping while the film is going because you party until very late at night. But the attention span and the focus that this allows in terms of audience is very special and particular in the times that we are living now, where everything happens so fast and the attention span and the economy of attention is really narrow. I feel this is a radical difference from the art world and how the work is framed and discussed. I don't want to romanticize festivals. A prize at a major festival is life-changing. When I was awarded this prize at Locarno Pardo di Domani, I was immediately invited to retrospectives in cinematheques, in other film festivals, focuses of the program, and that was a very special thing. But this kind of hides the economic reality of what a film festival is, the unapologetically competitive situation it is. It has main sections, parallel sections, the competitive, the non-competitive, the film market, the letterbox, bashing. All the economy relies on premieres. And they have to be the first ones to show a film, which shapes an entire strategy of where and when we submit to a festival. And then if you show at a certain festival, say a parallel section at Cannes, you cannot show your work in other places like Film Marseille or Rotterdam. There's this also competition between the festivals themselves to say that they were the first ones to show your work. And another important thing to say is that feature films are expensive. to do. To give you an example, a low-budget fiction film costs around 1 million euros, and many films made by artists do not get theatrical distribution. So where you invest in a film and then it's very unlikely that you will receive your investment back, especially when it comes to art house. So in my opinion, to give you my 2 cents about what could be possible in terms of, alliances between film festivals and art spaces, I think there could be more alliances between alternative film distribution companies and art institutions. For example, if a museum has an underused auditorium with equipment to screen films and cinema, why not invite collective alternative distribution companies and small festivals to be part of the life of the museum? This also could bring new audiences into the museums and keep cinema alive as an art form and invent new distribution circuits for artists and filmmakers. In a sense, it would be sharing the responsibility and work that a cinematheque does. That would be an important, I guess, collaboration of conversations that can be developed forward. And in terms of people in the room who are collectors or investors, I really invite you to look at business models of hybrid restaurants and coffee shops that also hold theaters within their spaces. Places like Tonalá in Mexico City or Cinéma Moderne in Montreal are really interesting models and beautiful ways to make cinema a living medium. So now I want to speak a little bit about how my work circulates in biennials. So biennials share for me similarities with festivals from my experience. It's a communal experience. We become art nerds again. We discuss works intensively. We exercise critical thinking, and we collectively reflect on what our present is. And sometimes biennials are the only real opportunity to have access for an artist like me who does not have a gallery representation, for example, to major curators, collectors, and stakeholders. So they're really vital in an artistic career. When a biennial works well, it allows us to fall in love with ultra-contemporary practices, not only for the audiences, but also for the artist. They connect local and international audiences and build bridges between places as different as Sharjah, Venice, Seoul, or Bogota, which of course have not really a lot in common, but these biennials are the way in which we create a common shared international art language in times of profound division and violence and authoritarian borders politics. So I feel also biennials form strong links to academia and criticism, which is fundamental for a practice like mine, because how much a film or a work that I do is discussed and studied influences its future exhibition preservation and allows me to make a living as an artist. Sometimes biennials allow new commissions, though from my experience, they require multiple co-producers. For example, the work that I presented at Liverpool Biennial, Hibié, was produced thanks to funding that I received from an exhibition at Pingchuk Art Center, then Liverpool Biennial, then money from the Centre National des Arts Plastiques for research, and a lot of personal funds. And part of this work becomes later on multi-channel installations, and at the end of the process, it also becomes sequences for an upcoming feature film. So this modularity of the production allows different platforms to sustain different parts of each project, and also sustains an artistic ecosystem that is hybrid and outside of the regular market, art markets. Another thing about biennials is that they are primarily expressions of a curator visions. We have little control over how the work is contextualized, who we exhibit next to, the sound conditions. There's also a lot of negotiations and back and forths of how we present the work, and it's not necessarily financially recognized. To give you an example, an artist fee at the biennial is between the range of 500 to 2,000 euros for a work, of producing a new, without counting, of course, the production money, but what artist receives as honorarium. So I would say that to close this part about biennials, that both biennials and festivals, to me, I sometimes wonder if their economic models could center more artists, raise fees for artists, perhaps try to find ways to sustain their labor in a way that could be more substantial. I'm also thinking about, in terms of, just a last note about biennials and thinking about Loop and the role of collectionism in collectors in this ecosystem. Sometimes I wonder if, in cases of self-production outside of a gallery space, if collectors could play a more active role supporting production before the exhibition. I am very interested in the porous space between patronage and collecting. So, for instance, supporting a multi-channel installation in exchange of a special edition or a unique print. These are things that I feel could be developed more and collectors be more invested in the biennial circuit. To end with the exhibition context, which is pretty different because it allows more freedom, I would say, as an artist, because you get to be more involved in how the work is framed and presented. I can say that when it comes to my own practice, I imagine solo shows as a feature film experience. So I will never show a work that is like 1 hour long or 45 minutes within a museum context, because that does not make sense with the attention span of the viewers. But I do feel that the whole show as an experience could run or could have the same length as a feature film, so say 1 hour and a half. So you have like 4 or 5 works that are 20 minutes each, and you can go from one to the other and have a very really progressive and immersive experience. Also narrative in a way. So to give you an example, in this solo show at the Crespo Foundation, I was repurposing previous works such as The Labyrinth and La Historia that you see in the images, but they were displayed in a way, in a scenography that was expanding the experience of each one of these films with also a site-sensitive approach, meaning that I'm taking into account the buildings, the architecture, the history of each one of the sites where the work is being shown, in order to make it resonate with the audiences and highlight experiences. And the last thing perhaps about this exhibition way of showing and producing the work is that it also allows a link with academia that is very concrete, as I really like to do workshops, and each time I present a solo show to invite audiences, young audiences, into institutions that sometimes they don't know. And to end, so this presentation, sorry, it feels a bit generalizing, but we have many things to discuss and people to listen to. To end this presentation, I wanted to share this image of how how a work can also occupy a site outside of the museum, art gallery, film festivals, and think about the multimedia production as also a medium for public commissions. And for me, the idea of thinking of an artwork within a public space resonates with the work that I do as a programmer, in the sense that I am always thinking about centering marginalized voices or histories that had been violented, always thinking about what constitutes our shared space and our shared commonality. So yeah, I really feel like working as a curator, programmer, and educator. It's a way of passing on, cross-pollinating public spaces. And this work is also a way to give back for what I have gotten in terms of knowledge and exposure, and redistribute this cultural capital among my peers, but also artists who are in positions of more vulnerability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. We're very grateful. You've been struggling with bronchitis and slowly was manifesting itself, and we're very grateful that you made the effort to be here and to be so generous about your work. Raphael, do you want to join us? And
Alô.
thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Boa tarde. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. I'm the only one using this Madonna microphone. I mean, I fell into this trap of accepting this microphone. Now I'm absolutely embarrassed. But anyway, second, I don't know why I'm very anxious for this. Perhaps because I admire not only you all here, but also some people here in this crowd. So I'm like literally sweating. So I hope I don't have. Yeah, and I came like dressed like this also. Anyway, but I hope I don't have a stroke in the middle of this presentation. Also, I think I became more stressed because Laura did such an amazing presentation reading, and I decided to take notes and be more like Brazilian saying freestyle things. But anyway, let's see. Now, after the jokes, let's start. No, I mean, I basically did a quick presentation talking about 2 projects I was involved in recently. As we all know, 15 minutes is something, but at the same time, is nothing. It's really complicated to, deliver a message in 15 minutes, and that also makes me a bit anxious. But I was thinking about this invitation and about this parallel between festivals, biennials, and exhibitions. Perhaps to me, all of this can be the same thing. So, for example, one of the first notes I took here was that, of course, first, biennials are spaces of exchange and education, and also I feel that what we convention to call as a visual arts biennial, in a certain way, it's our own peculiar response to something similar to a theater festival or like a dance festival or a cinema festival. And I say like this because in my case, I got in contact with the visual arts. I mean, I'm from Rio, from Brazil. My first contact with the visual arts was through cinema, so it was through cinema festivals. I never had the opportunity from my family to go to museums. I mean, I come from a very working class family in Rio, so we didn't go to museums. Actually, I brought my parents to museums the first time. So all my relation with art was through cinema and through moving images in general. So I consider myself in a certain way like an MTV generation guy from Brazil. And I think that connects me with moving images, and that's why cinema, video, and film in general is so important in my projects. And that's also why I think that in a certain way, biennials are also festivals. So I don't separate that much, even though I know that the format can be very different. I also was thinking about this thing about, I mean, not coming from, since we're here in Europe, right? I mean, I think it's important to say that these 2 programs we're going to talk about, they happen in Brazil, which in comparison to other places in the world is still a country where, for example, some statistics say that more or less 75 to 80% of the population never been to a museum before. So these biennials, they are very educational in the sense that to some people, it's the first time they get in contact with art, or with convention to call contemporary art. In my case, for example, I had a before and after experience at the São Paulo Biennial in 2006, the one that Lisette Lanhado curated. I mean, there was the first time I traveled from Rio to São Paulo. I took a bus, and I saw the biennial, and it changed my life. And then after that, in 2012, I had another experience at the Mercosul Biennial that José Roca from Colombia also curated. It was the 8th Mercosul Biennial. And then I'd like to start with a quote by Roca, because when I had the opportunity to buy the catalog after, and it was the first time that I took a plane to see a biennial, it has a text in the catalog that has like 20 comments about the biennial structure. And one of them say, a biennial is not a film club. And this is something that sticks with me until nowadays, and bringing something that Laura was talking, in the fact that, talking about the length of the works in biennials. So to him, the biennial is not a film club, because you need to, consider the presence and the structure and the welcoming of the body of the audience. So anyway, with this introduction, I brought here a few images of first, the 22nd edition of Video Brazil Biennial that happened in São Paulo between 23 and 24. Video Brazil, I suppose people here know about it because Solange Farkas, as far as I know, came here to Loop a few times. Is a very important video. It started as a festival in Brazil, started in '83, in a moment where Brazil was still dealing with a military dictatorship. So it was a moment where there was still censorship, for example, in the selection, not in the selection, but in the screening of film or video. It was an entirely Brazilian film, a video festival, then little by little became a Latin American video festival, and then after that it became a festival dedicated mostly to the so-called Global South. Video Brazil, I think, is also a very interesting case because from video it migrated to video installation, and from video installation it migrated to all possible media. And I think that also something that really is a question that we can debate after that makes a very peculiar event to organize is it happens after an open call. I mean, Laura also, I'm going to give you as example lots of times. Laura also participated as an artist there. So what does it mean to have a biennial that happens after an open call? And what does it mean to do a biennial also that has this open call attached to this idea of Global South that is very elastic and very fictional also? What is a Global South artist? I was born in Brazil, and when I was 4, I moved to Germany. Am I a Global South artist? I was born in Germany, I moved to Brazil when I was 18, I lived there for 50 years. Who can apply? Who can't apply? Solange's not here, she's the one that perhaps could help us answering these questions, but I think it's important to keep them in mind, because I think it makes it a very peculiar challenge. So we decided, René, Akitele Akimboye, and I, to call this biennial Memories and Editing Station. This is a quote by a very important Brazilian writer called Wally Salomão, that participated of Video Brazil also. We had 2,000 applications, we had 7 curators participating of the jury, and in the end, we selected around 50 artists, and we invited more or less 8, if I'm not wrong, artists to be part of it. Another thing that I took here as a note about this relation between video, film, and biennials is the relation with space, because I think that in this case, everything happens in one space. And as you can see from the images, and I don't deny my Baroque way of curating sometimes, is a very excessive biennial, and also a very complicated space by the one and only Paulo Mendes da Rocha, a very famous Brazilian modernist architect. A space has 2 different heights, so you have the super tall here and very short over here. So it's a good challenge not only to a curator that deals with moving images, but also to the architects that were part of our team. And in this case, since we were in a certain way celebrating the 40 years of Video Brazil, we decided on a purpose to select artists that deal with video in very different ways. So for example, we have Doppelganger, this duo from Serbia, that has the screens over here and headphones. You have Cheyu Shu with the LED panel on the back, Samuel Fosso on the right. Here, the Mujin brothers from South Korea, Abdesamad El Montasir from Morocco, a painting by Namachira, Eduardo Montelli, Brazilian with a small screen, and Zhu Xianpeng here on an LED panel on the right. So the whole idea of the exhibition design and our reflection was to bring this excessive experience of dealing with all the screens, and also in a moment, since we are celebrating 40 years of Video Brazil, to have from tube TVs to this very high-tech P1, very expensive LED panels. And then, of course, a reflection that we had during the process was how to break this exhibition space and try to invade this venue that's called Sesc 24 de Maio, Sesc May 24th, in the center of São Paulo. So, for example, this is a work by Caro Koplemets and Maido Just from Estonia. I have an Estonian friend over there. This, for example, is Freud, a Brazilian artist that was in the public space, dealing with also LED panels. And then we had this work by Fefswag, a collective from New Zealand. There was a video game in the entrance of the building. And then, of course, it's beautiful to see this image like this, and it's nice to see, what Video Brazil did as a biennial. I mean, I'm not going to open the discussion now, but this was the last edition that happened as an exhibition. So now Video Brazil is going to keep on being an institution dedicated to archive, discussion, but the biennial is not happening anymore. But there's something that is clear here, that being a Brazilian, of course, something we need to discuss, that is the presence, of course, of the budget to make possible a biennial like this. I remember in the short text that Filipa did about this, this meeting we have here, is saying how biennials and festivals can show properly video, can show in a professional way the works by the artists. And then I want to move to another example that also happened in Brazil, actually this year. There was a nice challenge to discuss, again, video, biennial, and all this structure. That is the Mercosul biennial. So the Mercosul Biennial, different from Video Brazil, was a biennial that was created by a group of collectors from the city called Porto Alegre, a city in the south of Brazil, that's close to Argentina and Uruguay. Historically, it's a biennial dedicated only to Latin American art, but in the last editions, it had changed and amplified a bit this approach. It's a city that is, in a certain way, at the same time, not only the avant-garde of Brazilian art and the left-wing movement in Brazil, but at the same time, it's a very conservative city, one of the cities that voted the most for Bolsonaro, for example, in the last elections in Brazil. So you have two very different extreme sides of Brazil in the same city. And then a decision we took during the biennial, I was a chief curator, but it was a group of people, were 7, 8 curators working together, was to call the biennial SNAP and to think about the passage of time and the fast times we have nowadays as an inspiration for the biennial in a certain way. And then, of course, if we're dealing with this velocity of time, it made lots of sense to have a massive presence of videos in the biennial. So from 77 artists in the show, we commissioned 53 works, 53 artists, and most of these commissions were video, and already discussing about it, it was only possible to commission the works because they were video. Because, of course, we would never have the budget to ship all these works to Brazil, and not only Brazil, to the south of Brazil, which would make things even more expensive. It's also an interesting case because while Video Brazil was only in one venue, this biennial happened in 18 venues, in 8 venues. And then we had not only places downtown, Porto Alegre, but also places in the periphery of the city for the first time in the biennial history. So some questions that came to me that I was taking notes, like how to have video of one of the main media of the biennial, and how to introduce video to a non-specialized audience, because sometimes I had a feeling that videos were is a media that sometimes makes more difficult for a non-specialized audience. But I think that especially after the Mercosul Biennial, I learned that no, you need to remember that Brazil is the 3rd country in the world regarding consuming social media and using our black mirrors all the time. We're absolutely addicted to video. We're absolutely addicted to gossiping. We're absolutely addicted to memes. We're absolutely addicted to soap operas and all of this. So anyway, so it made sense to have a biennial with this presence of video, but at the same time, how to experiment with video. So I brought some quick examples. I have this, for example, Kira Shonorica, an artist, a Guarani artist from Paraguay, that she did a whole new work with AI that was very polemic because when we shared on our Instagram that there was an artist dealing with AI, we were absolutely canceled by some people from the city because AI is not art, etc., etc. But then we had this idea of showing the work in the public space, in this big LED panel. And this seems perhaps, I don't know, a very simple idea, but it's something that really catch the attention of the audience, and lots of people enter this venue because of the image and because of this futuristic effect of the LED panel. Or, for example, at the same time, we had in the biennial a pioneer of video installation that I'm absolutely in love with, like Gretchen Bender. It was the first time that her show was showing, her work was showing in Brazil, and it was at the same time the most expensive work in the whole biennial, right? Because it's quite difficult to have all these tube TVs all at once. Or, for example, have Rodrigo Cas, another artist from São Paulo, that is doing like a sculpture and also video sculpture. So all of these are editions of one, for example. Or in the same venue where you have Kira, you have this work by Fatima Rodrigo from Peru. And I was telling Filipa when we had coffee yesterday how sometimes when you think about video, we don't remember, for example, that karaoke is also video. So, for example, this, that I thought that it would be like, an absolutely flop that no one would interact with. This became one of the biggest hits. The biennial people would go there every day to sing in the exhibition space. At the same time, we had the possibility of collaborations like this with Victoria Cribb and the Charger Biennial. So this was work. There was a co-commission. Or someone like Osgur Kar, that of course he was not able to go to the biennial, but were able to produce the work there. So in a certain way, just thinking from a more like Latin American / Global South perspective of making biennials, the video is what made possible in this case to have this international presence, and the video is what made possible also to have this experimentation. So for example, in a case like this with Jacoby Satterwhite, to some people, this was the first time they were seeing an holographic fan in a contemporary work. So, and then it was very funny because when we were budgeting this for the biennial, we thought it would be absolutely impossible to have a work like this. And then we realized it's quite cheap to have in Brazil. And then 6 months after the biennial, you have artists from the city doing works also with holographic fans. And then I think that, of course, I mean, to have a biennial that is not properly a video biennial like Video Brazil mostly is, but a biennial with a strong presence of video is also interesting in the sense that the laws in Brazil that support commissioning artworks, when a biennial like this, since it comes from public money in Brazil, when you commission artwork that has a materiality, the artists need to donate the work to a public institution in Brazil. When you commission a video, you can donate a copy to a public institution and then keep on circulating with the works internationally. So in our case, some of these artists that I show and many others, they were able to have the works in still circulating and showing them everywhere, not only in biennials, but also in festivals and also in other exhibitions. And then just one last comment before finishing is how interesting was this whole experience of doing this biennial, because as you saw here, this chroma key green, it was a decision from the designer and the architect to play with it in the entire project. And since we had such a massive presence of videos in the project, there was a review that came in Brazil of someone problematizing and analyzing as a metaphor this chroma key green as the biennial at all, and as the world we live nowadays. So there was a question if we live in a chroma key world, and if me as a creator and our entire team would believe that, if it's all a fake, if it's all mirrored, if it's all chroma key, where's the sense of materiality and reality in our projects and our daily lives? So anyway, I thought it was very interesting to see this reflection, and I think it is also two case studies of how to use video as a main media, let's say, in big narrative, in exhibitions that have this big narrative around them. So anyway, I'm open to questions later, and thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raphael, and welcome, Sunjung.
Nice to meet you, and thank you, Filipa, to invite me to be here. I just arrived last night, midnight, so I really like a little bit different time zone. But I'm from Korea, South Korea, well known for soap opera and K-pop music, and but we have art in Korea. So I want to introduce my institution, at Sonje Center. I work there in and out for 30 years. It's the 30th anniversary of the institution. And I will little bit discuss about Sonje, and then the recent production of the artist I will talk about. So I want to talk about how to work and collaborate with artists for the new commissioning and production. So Art Sonje is a small institution in Seoul, and before this building, we had this is a current show of Adrian Villalobos exhibition, and we built the roof with the garden, upside down garden, and then hanging the very heavy sculpture in the one floor, and the other floor is blocked by the 50 the soils. So we want to make the institution to make artists' ideas to realize. So, and also artists ask us to not to have a temperature control. So we cut the heating and air conditioning system. So we had a very, very hot summer. And then we are expecting, because this exhibition is quite expensive for us, so we have 2 exhibition budget together for have this exhibition. So we are expecting have a very cold winter. The exhibition will be until February 1st. So we are the institution to really cross work with artists and to realize what they want and experiment what they cannot do in other institutions. So that's us. And this is the first show I made in 1995. So for the building, we have a house. An architect is designing the space. So I used the house to make the first show with inviting artists, and that was the beginning of what our institution can be. So one of the artists, Isoba, because of this situation of abandoned house, so I asked artists to make a new production for the site, and then he said, "Oh, you ask production, then you have to pay for the production." So since then, we try to closely work with artists and commissioning and pay for the production. Sometimes we don't have enough money, then we try to find the money with other places, but yes. And Raphael talked about karaoke. So 2003, I worked with Christian Jankowski. He came and then he went out at night. I cannot see him. I couldn't see him in the daytime. He was so busy to go to clubbing and karaoke. And then his proposal was making a piece for the karaoke machine. So we went to the karaoke company that, can we put his video into his playing list in the karaoke machine? And then one of the company said yes, so we can put his karaoke in the Korean karaoke program. So if you come Korea, you can see Jankowski's video still in the video program. And Hee-Chung Kim, we commissioned him to make a show at Sonje and Koki Tanaka. And we work with artists usually to commissioning. So now I will talk about the current project with Haegyu Yang. She's a well-known Korean artist. And then Haegyu had this piece in 2020, wall painting for her solo show. And then she, inspired by the North and South Korea, made a deal in 2018 by the government and explore of GP, the guard post, the military place, explode. So she got inspired from this. She made this wall painting. And then there is many different aspects of this painting. So one day I talked to Haegyu that, are you interested in the bees? And then she said yes. So we started our journey for 2 years to do I went to the environmental study in the university, Seoul National University, and then they have a scholar who is expert in bees, because nowadays bees are disappearing. So many scholars are researching on the bees. So we talked to the school, and then they are interested in. So we got the team, and then we got the reading list, and then read the books, and then we got a lecture from the specialists, and then we had the beehive places, and then also because of the bee are disappearing, they are doing bee with the GPS. So how much they are flying, how many, what is their road, and then they are researching. So we are doing this with them, and then also I do the project in the DMZ area. So we went to Cheolwon to see beehive there. And then she is interested in the waggle dance. Bee has a round dance and then waggle dance. So with this kind of inspiration, she has kind of made this a storyboard for and then she want to make animation. So we don't have enough money to animation. So we went to one animation company, and they are interested in the making animation. So we got this started work with animation company, but they are very commercial, so they don't know how to work with artists. So every time we talk to them about the costume and face, they don't understand, and then so many discussions and many different types. And then finally we got this figure. Looks like Haegyu Yang, the artist, and but yeah. And then also the music is from Yunisang, one of the Korean contemporary musician. He was accused by North Korean spy, but he is using Korean traditional music to the symphony or orchestra, and then also quarter, and so it was really interesting figure. So she used one of his music for the music. This is about him and his music. So we made this single channel video. So this is the show this year, actually in Paju, the border area. I made the exhibition every year at the border. So this is showing in the one of the storage of the rice. And during the before the harvesting, rice storage is empty. So the villagers gave us permission to use this storage to have the showing the works. And Ikibai Kururu is a 3 artist collective. We asked them to also research on the border area. So they went to Cheolwon and then do the research. So this left side building was made during the Japanese occupation time. And then it became a border, and then it was empty. Nobody cannot use them. So it's been empty, so many empty places, and then there are like kind of propaganda village before, and then now is people are living there, and they are do this graffiti, and then working with the community, and then with the fruit leaf, leaf, using leaf make a sound, leaf fruit, and then using that as a sound, and then made a video. And these are places we worry about North Korea, so we made a kind of plantation to raise the plant or trees for North Korea, because they don't have enough money to have heating. So they cut all the trees and then made for the fire. So we want to, for Korean government is made this research center to research on the trees or plant in North Korea, and then raise them, and then wanted to send them, but it's not possible. So we are keeping them in South. So the video is about this. And then Kim Min-gi is another important figure in Korean pop music, folk music. And he made very important songs in 1971. And that became a demonstration songs during the Korean dictatorship. So using that song for the and they made a video on both sides. And Adrian Villar-Loas is the artist I showed in the beginning, and I've been working since 2014. And the first video was made after first visit in 2014. I invited him for the DMZ project, and then when he arrived, he wanted to have host the dinner for the villagers. So we got 2 pigs, and then he made cooking for the pigs with Argentinian style, slow cooking. And then he invited all the villagers because the local area, young people left, and then only like 80-year-old or 90-year-old 할머니, old ladies, and then old men are living there. And then youngest one is like 40, but very small number of people. So he invited them to fed them with this cooking. And then after that, all the villagers invited him or his team to come over their house to have a dinner. So he is using this chance to have invited to the house. He had made a video and using his sculpture, and this sculpture he made for the Venice Biennale Argentina Pavilion, and he made a small sculptures and then gave to all the villagers. So I didn't get any sculpture, but all the villagers there got this sculpture, and still they keep it at their home. And the video is shooting the how they live there, and also with his sculptures in there, and the and what. And then I invite him to another commission for Gwangju Biennale. I was president of the Gwangju Biennale Foundation, and Biennale didn't have much money to commissioning artists, usually very small amount. So I talked to the several companies in Korea to started the Gwangju Biennale Commission. So one company is paying for the artist production. So I got one company to pay for Adrian's video production, but it's still, I saw it was enough, but it was not enough for the artist. So, but he made, this is another project, sorry, he made a house installation in that area, because all the houses is, so this is not related to the video. Yeah, and then another Gwangju Biennale production is Ho Chun-yang, Singaporean artist. I commissioned him for May 18. Gwangju has uprising, democratic uprising, and many people died, and a big demonstration in 1980. And he is using the many Korean movie with this uprising, and then also this Chinese idea of this Yang and then I Ching, and then made a hexagon video. So he's using Korean films. Yes. So yeah. So made this, and then also we had another production for 2024. It took us 3 years, but we are not enough money, so we work with Singapore Art Museum co-commissioning, and then made a video about time. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting and giving the opportunity to think about, and thank you all of the three of you to touching such very important points. I would like to share that we were given 3 questions by Filipa to think about 3 specific subject matter. One was on moving images or moving between time-based media, biennial and festivals, and museums charged with a heavy exhibition legacy. The second one was on how artist cinema evolves between the temporary and the permanent. And the third one was on what biennial commissioning can teach long-term institutional planning, and the other way around. So what I did, I just tried to answer these questions. And I was also hoping to loop something, because the idea was to loop, so I would try to make it by hand. On time-based media biennials and museum, the shift, I think, is the weight of responsibility. Projects like biennials and video biennials in particular live very short and have to produce new forms and have to deal with new forms. When you work in institutions, museums, either with a collection, like in my case, Tate Modern, or institution charged with a history, like Haus, Kunst, the rhythm is broader, the institution carries memory, and the public remembers and recalls, and follows cycles. That's why I think we invented, when I was in both Tate and Haus der Kunst, a format called the live exhibition, a sort of crack within the pace of the institution that could allow to experiment and to introduce a new form that was in between festival and form of exhibition as a challenge into the program, as a sandbox to experiment. So let's say time-based media depends on presence, depends on duration, depends on encounter. A museum is based on anchoring or echoing that encounter that as a public we have in an history that continues over the years. That's what I mean by responsibility. There are two different responsibilities. One at stake with artists, and you produce relatively quickly, normally with few means or little means, but you want the maximum outcome. And the responsibility is toward the artist. Whilst when you work in a museum, the responsibility is towards time and towards the history of the collection and towards the public, particularly. What you are seeing, this sort of analogic loop, is in fact strands within the two museums or two institutions I was mentioning, Tate and Haus der Kunst, and the live exhibitions. And what struck me by composing this strand was the fact that, in fact, this live exhibition that lasted 3 years at Tate, 4 years at Tate, and now at the 4th year at Haus der Kunst, in fact, do not leave so much, do not leave behind so much. If you read at the names, now probably you recognize the names, but in that very moment, and within the history of the institution, that didn't produce a major shift, neither communication-wise, nor like in the memory of the actual institution. Nevertheless, I think they are fundamental and relevant, as in fact festivals are or biennials are. So how artist cinema evolves between the temporary and the permanent, that's to me a very interesting question. So let's say the definition of time-based media is stretching more and more, and what is I think interesting in the very last years is there is more and more independency from technology. Whilst since the 90s I could observe artists working or dealing with media and video in particular, following up on the technology, either the software or the machine, bless you, or the actual output, therefore the various screens. What happened recently with this opportunity to collect memories and play with all form of memory is that the output is not, or the machine produced is not necessarily relevant. So there's a sort of independency. So you have the shift and the possibility, yes, of relying on the last technology, be any form of LED wall, but also on playing with exhausted, apparently, technology that can come back. So within this, the difference, again, or the dialogue is the biennials, it's like a spark. The biennial generates works that are prototypes that may or may not collapse. They do not necessarily need to be memorialized and survive. And this we should accept as a matter of fact. In museums, we are somehow dealing with something that gains thickness, that has to do with a context, that engage with the memory of the building or with the building itself, whilst the biennial is slightly different. And then whatever this form is, within a museum or institution, it becomes somehow a component of that new forms of monument that the building is and represent. And I mean, I call it monument because I think it's interesting to think about how monuments are changing nowadays and how institutions are becoming, hopefully, the monuments of the present, the place where through the program history can be challenged and transformed and becoming like a nest for a gathering that is the gathering where care and trust and welcoming happens, as we were mentioning beforehand. So it's this sort of dialogue between the spark and something that instead deals with the space. But whilst dealing with the space, and that made me think, it expands, it spills out, and it somehow starts dancing. So if I should say how myself, I've been watching at works made through media, and video in particular, I will say in the last years, what I think is quite interesting, regardless of the frame, the technological frame, is looking at the actual work as if it had a presence. They have a presence more and more, as it was really extruding and really becoming a form of animation, presence within the building, within the institution. I realize this is quite conceptual, but this uncontainability, this willingness of giving up to the black box, this willingness of like playing outside the affordance that inherently so many artworks have from, I could see from artists of the last years, is something extraordinarily interesting. It's a form of new body, it's a form of body made of different bodies, and these different bodies are dancing. So I see this, on the one hand, this temporary and permanent in dialogue. I see the 3-6 months of an exhibition in an institution against a short time of a, let's say, media biennial. But I see this animate form being extremely interesting and relevant to be considered. Now, what could be an example? If you look at the work of, let's say, Hito Style recently, she made this work called Mechanical Courts. The frames around the work, and she's been framing works, installation recently, but it's in fact a deframe tentative, as if it was a willingness of generate and put this body in space, and this body is uncontainable. So for us that used to work as programmers and programming memory and programming training of the public, dealing with these living presences or the semi-living presence is extremely interesting. So what is then the dialogue between a biennial commissioning and what can teach a biennial commissioning to a long planning institution? Of course, there is a degree of urgency against the degree of continuity, a need of continuity, and it is this sort of balance in which biennial can teach on be active, on be alive, on be urgent, and not to repeat ever, no, but rather to attune. Whilst the museum teaches to endure. The museum teaches the endurance, no? The museum keeps to the biennial to keep going. That's actually the sort of dialogue is, I think, super interesting and beautiful. I would never call it a competition because the one should just keep going and the one should just keep pushing, no? And in this sort of dialogue or challenge, I could say that from a personal point of view, I have been for a long time into, and still am, into the idea of composing programs, no? and learning from film programming. What is the experience of the screen, of the cinema room that Lara was describing, which is so wonderful and compelling. But what is in fact interesting is the fact that you learn to play with the expectation, the pace, the rhythm, and the capacity, the affordance of the public, right, in time and space. But I'd say now, what I think it's, or at least for me, very interesting, is dealing with this form of living bodies that are extruding, that are the artworks that have been, we had been described by Raphael, we had been described in other forms eventually. So how do you deal with these living bodies that extrude, that are like making static institution challenging and interesting? I think this is what we could call, and now I'm taking the example of an artwork that we produced recently, the retinal rivalry. And this is a definition by Cyprien Gaillard. If you happen to see the work Retinal Rivalry by Cyprien Gaillard, actually you remember probably that it's not so much the awkwardness of what the journey of the camera goes through, but it's the fact that you are in a room with this sculpture, these bodies in front of you, and they are with you. And the fact that they are with you, I think it's the new fact. In fact, it's very, very interesting. So this closeness, which is obviously metaphorically the closeness that brings us more and more within this multiversal condition that is given through this medium, it's something that within walls is, I think, in this moment the most interesting to compose and to deal with. And what we saw was, I think, the journey of various institutions that try to incorporate new form of production, learning from biennial, that, as I was saying, suggest or whisper to keep pushing and accommodating this new form of production within major histories that are the one that we still want to keep doing and doing for the sake of art history and art histories that are still transforming themselves, but also ourselves and everyone who encounters them for the first time, as it can be in Brazil, or for the end time as someone who is not so much highly educated, but maybe just simply resilient and keeps trusting the fact of going in museums and art center to learn. I think I said everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Well, as you revealed, I already had my private moment of asking questions to the speakers, and I'm very grateful for the way in which they addressed them in their presentations. So what I thought, I do have questions, of course, but I thought we were also a little bit more expensive, that maybe we could start opening and see if anyone in the audience wants to start with a question, and we take it from there. There's a microphone available. Of course.
¿Usa este? Sí. Hi, I'm from Argentina, but I have lived for a long time in Southeast Asia. To the four of you, I don't know which one of you would like to answer. I have visited a lot, or I'm very interested in a lot of biennales that are not actually extruded, from an institution's formula or structure. So like, for example, Kochi, Dakar Summit, Yogyakarta, the Gran Bienal Tropical in Puerto Rico, where artists come with their cars, their cinema nights are in the middle of the jungle in the beach. What do you think? Because we are talking about biennales, festivals, and I don't know what was the other one, institutions, exhibitions. What do you think of? Do you think those formulas are the ones that are like sort of like breaking the white box gallery in those terms? What do you think? Is this the trend, or what happened the last Documenta as well, that they literally changed the way a Documenta worked? Do you think this is the trend? Do you think this is where we should focus? Would you like to participate in kind of, I think, Rafa, you're the one. No? Well, but I mean, we talked a lot about very structured institutional formulas. I want you to open up to other formulas and tell us about those.
So I'm from Asia, so these Asian biennales, because of institution like museums or gallery space, is not common in the local areas. Also, Raphael talked about the Biennale when he first saw the Biennales was when his eye broken. So for us, it was a different space to start with contemporary art and using these spaces to the biennales, and also the gathering and meeting point for the audience is totally different. So this experience is also important for us to develop further. But I think it's not a trend. It's like necessary for us to have this contemporary art in our society. So that's what I thought it started in that way.
I mean, hello? Yeah, okay. Thanks for the question. I think it depends. I mean, I think that I think you're trying to quote you, Benedict. I think there are some projects and biennials that are more like, let's say, the São Paulo Biennial, right? You have the second oldest biennial, you have that building, etc. It's one structure. For example, something else could be what Curator did now in Bangkok, Ghost, as a festival. I think both are important. I think both happen since art is there, let's say, in different ways, in different places, in different paces also. For example, the Mercosul Biennial, we didn't have a main venue. I mean, because the foundation, they never bought a building, so we could do it anywhere, in any form. But recently I was, for example, in the Taipei Biennial, which is something that happens like in the TIFA, the Taipei Fine Arts Museum, a public museum, etc. And it was very interesting. It was very white cube in a certain way, but it was very interesting, even though it was only one building. So I would say that I think both are important. I don't think it's a trend. I think it's like an experimental exercise of art that's been there since modernisms. But yeah, and I think that one thing collaborates with the other one, you know, as curators, but I think also to artists, right? It's interesting to participate in both and all possible formats, I mean.
Hello. Okay, maybe I can speak to that. I have also mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I feel like these vernacular approaches that are very locally situated and are trying also to build in difficult circumstances and with smaller economies are extremely important and necessary and vital for the ecosystems. We were talking about the so-called global south, what does it mean? But it's true that in our context, I'm from Colombia, it's if we don't have these events, there's an extremely important part of the ecosystem that is not alive and well. And on the other hand, I'm also thinking about how these conversations could also include and center a little bit more the conditions of labor of artists, because in these different initiatives, it's not sustainable, for example, for a practice like mine to be part of it, because it engages that I have to have to another job, basically, and dedicate my time to a different thing in order to sustain my presence in that particular event. So I feel like I have mixed feelings about this, because as an artist, what I want to do is my practice. And I would like this practice to be professionalized, not in the term of being institutionalized or commodified, but I want my work to be acknowledged.
What about the relationship with public in these kind of versus more structured Biennale? What's the access, the relationship?
I think if I can just expand on what was said now, I think it would be honest to acknowledge as much as possible what in the moment artists are thinking, practicing, and dreaming about. And the form shouldn't be necessarily given by a frame. The frame can be and needs to be given by artists. In fact, as an institution, now I'm talking about institution, I'm just simply inspired by the myriads of independent spaces, independent practices that formulate forms that are the one that we know can help us to be challenged. So I wouldn't say there's a trend. I mean, Ghost, Not by Chance, is a format that comes from an artist, and it will accommodate in the best possible way the forms that them want to be shared. So then it's about the public to engage, but in that specific form, what I think it's extremely interesting that is they invented a new way. Every institution that is looking forward is trying to learn on sharing through storytelling. So, and it's a very specific question that who was in course can speak more about me. But the public then will encounter a new form of approaching artworks and live events or concerts through storytelling and through storytellers that are not even anymore hosts as they were after they were guardians and then visitor experience assistant, but storytellers. So I think this is what we could do. I mean, try listening to how artists are shaping the worlds they want to be into, no? And not the one they're obliged to be.
Maybe I step in with a question that traversed my thoughts throughout your 4 presentations, which concerns possible ways to move forward with cooperation and collaboration, which is something we all desire so much, we know need so much, and at the same time, intrinsically, institutions, being them biennials or non-biennials, institutions do compete with one another in different ways. And this competition is bizarre. It can be, if you have that work, I also want that work. Or if we showed Christian Marclay's The Clock in LA, then we also want to show Christian Marclay's The Clock in Shanghai, because it's a key work, and we want to reveal how capable we are of delivering something that many people are curious about. But it can also be that, oh, you showed Lara Huertas Millán, then we're not going to show Lara Huertas Millán, because we want to be original. We want to be different. And so, and exactly because I do think in different paces, but we are going through moments, a moment of overall compression in a way. I wanted to ask whoever wants, if they want to share their thoughts or experiences on how we can also break these logics of competition that are so intrinsic, but they also make us do incredible things, and imagine, or if you have imagining, ways to move forward with collaborations and cooperations. I know it sounds like a Miss Universe question, but maybe there's some truism in this.
Well, I think maybe my answer needs to be out of the record, because I was immediately thinking about pirate care. You know, we're living in times where so many artists face not having visas to travel to an exhibition. They face war, they face loss, and amounts of grief and loss that are very difficult to measure. And these artists have very important voices, especially today. And sometimes engaging with them means that you need to make the most of what you have and the most of the institution. So that means, for example, being willing to inflate the budget with in-kind services. I'm thinking about this. For example, recently I had an event in New York, and the institution that was hosting me was paying, a fee, had a very small production envelope, but what I got in kind in terms of making DCPs, of working with the technicians of the museum, being in touch with local associations, helped my project move forward so much. And so I feel like we are all under a lot of pressure and labor, but it's true that every time there are acts of solidarity that go off the record, even within big institutions, it goes a long way.
I can say something. I think it's the beautiful unwritten agreement that institutions have when it goes down to collecting, which is at the most peaceful state of things. No? I would collect this artwork, but I don't, because in my region there's another institution that has it, so fantastic, we can share, or we can co-collect, or on the other way around, oh damn, they just acquired that. However, we are looking on building on these artists, and therefore we will acquire earlier work. So this is very beautiful, and it's extremely interesting and beloved. This is, as you perfectly frame, not true at all when it goes to programming. It's war, unhappiness, friction, envy, jealousy, to deal with when going to the next thing, to the one that guarantees an outcome in public, that has name recognition, that is cool, and so on. I always think that going back to the question of what is the difference between the long run and the engagement an institution has and the short life, the sparks that a festival or a biennial lives on, I always think it's on the base of the pristine vision that you can keep going, in the sense that every gesture, every choice is motivated when it sits within a trajectory. If the trajectory is kind of visible, there is no friction, there's no competition, there's no giving up to this exhibition, because actually it doesn't make sense to make this exhibition in Munich if the artist has been living in Berlin all her life and making really something groundbreaking. So it's wonderful if she can show her work where she had a major impact rather than in Munich. And this makes sense for every other town. But within all the strands that makes a vision, and therefore the journey of an institution, I think you can find an almost always peaceful agreement, and therefore cooperate and work on not competing, or collaborate and work on not being frustrated. Nevertheless, this is hard because not all institutions, actually very few, are not driven or guided by a long-term vision, I believe. So, and they try to scramble, particularly in this moment where we are all in a situation of somehow crumbling or feeling crumbling, and therefore relying on trying to react to the urgency rather than to put your feet in the soil that you know is going to melt anyways, but why not melting joyful with what you trust, no? So this will be somehow the baseline, no? Encouraging and having strong, let's say, positions and vision that justify the possibility of keeping collaborating on the base of actual vision, and therefore you can have a major institution dealing and collaborating with a very small producer, rather than trying to enter this territory that you described perfectly, which is a matter of fact, no? It's a territory we're all familiar with, and it's producing so much pain sometimes that it's not necessary, no? In a world that is already crumbling.
There's a question here. There's one in the back.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful contributions on collaborating. It's also important to acknowledge the different struggles and challenges that you have within the institution and independently. And whilst I very much appreciated Sunjung's and Andrea's representative display of successful projects, I also acknowledge Raphael and Laura's infrastructural critique in the ways how you have engaged both an independent curator within the biennial constructs and as an artist. These are all forms in which collaboration can manifest. But what I'm still missing is the process of trusting and caring. And I wonder if you could give us a glimpse on all this noise and all these challenges, infrastructural challenges that we today face on a sociopolitical, ideological, ecofeminist level. What are these moments of intimacy that you create with the work as non-artists yourselves? And what do you trust first in these moments? Thank you.
Okay, you're all looking at me. I don't know how to answer this. I think it's a very, more than a professional question, I think it's a very, I mean, like everything in life, it's a very existential question. I don't know. I mean, talking about trust, I think that in my case, I mean, the process of, I mean, I can only talk about my case, of course, working in this case of the biennials with different artists. I think that every moment is a moment of trust. I think it's also a very fragile way to work because, for example, as it's written there, I work for the Denver Art Museum, so I'm not here talking about my projects there. I'm talking about the Mercosul Biennial, which I was paid to do as a freelance curator for 2 years. So that's the same case of Filipa Brazil. So I don't represent the institution. So talking about care, for example, there were lots of moments, not during Filipa Brazil, but during the Mercosul Biennial where I felt very fragile because, you know, the institution does things that I wouldn't do, but at the same time I'm not the institution. So I think it's tricky, and it's something that I learn fast. I mean, how to all the times defend the artist, and at the same time, how to pick the exact moments to the exact fights against, let's say, or together with the institution. So I don't know, I mean, so trying to answer your question, I think this idea of intimacy and care, or at least this one-to-one relationship between creator and artist, is in every moment. It's not only when we invite someone, or it's not only when you see a work being born, but it's in the small things. For example, I remember during the Mercosul Biennial, I was very, very worried, like welcoming all the artists, for example, and to make them feel slightly comfortable in Brazil. Some of them travel, for example, from Bangkok, from Seoul to Brazil for the first time. So I think that being a curator is dealing with all these aspects of working with other people. So, you know, independently of who the artist is, independently of the moment of their career where they are, we should be, you know, with them and for them the entire time. But that's, anyway, a very therapeutical and very existential answer from me, yeah.
Thank you. There was another question there.
Thank you very much. And Laura, special thanks for the focus on artist needs. My question follows the conversation about the collaborations or partnership between the institutions, because the acquisition of video art is more simple, I would say, that some of big forms or big installations, and it's always a great thing for the artist. But from my own experience, I haven't seen a lot of co-ownership forms between institutions and museums. And it could be a great form of supporting artists, uniting powers to support next productions. What do you think about this? Could this be a future for the development of collections, of permanent collections, following the sparks of knowledge during the biennials? And what stops the institutions to realize this? Because, again, from my experience, I expected it to be easier, much easier to do. Thank you very much.
I mean, I showed one of the video of Ho Chun-young. We co-product commission with the Singapore Art Museum and us, but we are a small museum, so Singapore Art Museum has more budget than us. So we try to have a co-commissioning and then collect the work, but we don't have enough money to this, so we do with M+ for co-owner. I mean, edition is video is always several editions, so I ask M+ to have a co-ownership of the work. So we did that, and also recently we announced it. We are working with Hans Nefken Foundation to do co-commissioning with 5 institutions: Taipei, New Taipei City Museum, and us, and the Mukha, and Helsinki, I forgot the name, but so and we co-commissioning with Hans Nefken's commissioning money, and then we are going to have a co-ownership. It will be 4 institutions with the 4 edition, and this we are trying to do. Also for making exhibition, we try to co-commissioning. And then, because the budget became so high for the film and cinema production, so we try to have 4 institutions working together. So Apichapong, Thai filmmaker, we are working now for the exhibition, but we asked Singapore Art Museum Tycoon, and then another institution in Europe, we co-commission, and then we are not making same exhibition to travel because of space is different, and also the curating different for the institution's vision and mission. So we are having co-commissioning, and then exhibition will be different with 4 institutions. So different model we are developing.
Last chance. One last question, Elena.
Hi again, thank you for a great conversation. But I think going back to Laura and what you were mentioning about artists' pay and production costs, and going back to the idea of collaborating, what about taking it out of the institutions and collaborating with film funds and using it against them? Like what I've started doing is I take the artist out of the conversation. I just say I'm working with a filmmaker, And then when I need it from the art world, I say I'm working with an artist. So I mean, that's a producer being duplicitous probably, but it's a way of giving them the language that they understand. And going back to what Laura said is, precisely, Laura, I mean, the work is expensive, the work is ambitious, and that's why it's expensive, and you should be paid correctly. And we have in England, and you know, I've been out in the cold, you know, through Brexit, and our loved ones have left England to go to Europe again. But we're, you know, necessity is the mother of all invention. So you sit there in England and you think, well, let's just take from the film funds and let's tell artists, because if you bring your budget in England, in the UK, over $1 million, you get 50% tax credit as opposed to 30% tax credit. So I say, artists, be ambitious, and let's take out the artist word, you're a filmmaker, and let's go for those tax mitigations for our companies that are trying to do this and collaborate. So I think it's just like we have to use their language, I'm afraid. Appropriate their language.
No, I totally agree. I mean, there are instances when the work is funded by a film fund and then shown within an art space, or it's funded by academia, by a university where you work, and then you show the film at a film festival alongside the film industry. And yeah, so or I've also come with another source of fundraising, which is working with non-profit organizations, not necessarily art foundations, but foundations organizations that have common interests and similar agendas when it comes to politics. So, for example, I have a project around decriminalizing the coca plant, which is the basis for cocaine. And now I'm looking at non-profit organizations that work with harm reduction, or, you know, and they also have programs of cultural campaigns, and they're actively looking for filmmakers, so there are possibilities to build bridges. So I feel like, yes, this is a very fertile, you know, landscape to kind of delve into. And at the same time, it's also very precarious. I'm thinking about the fact that I recently applied to the Colombian Film Fund to fund a feature film that I have been working on for a decade. And I didn't get the funding. And I was working with a film producer who has done multiple productions, knows how to speak to these commissions, and still we are so many filmmakers applying. You'd never know who the jury is going to be. I've been part of these juries, and it's very sad that sometimes you just need to go with the consensus because the jury is so different that you just need to find a common ground, and you leave outside a lot of practices and people. So I feel like it's a matter of trying to diversify as much as possible.
Is it an easy question? Last.
Okay, well, about co-commissioning and collaborating, one thing that is interesting about film festivals is not only are they a place where new work is shown, but it's also a place where people meet and where sometimes films are being made, because film festivals have this great film market. And this is where, you know, filmmakers or producers, they bring their work that is sometimes still a work in progress or just a plan, and then they talk with people, talk with other producers or with distributors to, you know, to bring it to a next stage. And sometimes I feel this is missing for artists working with film. And I was actually maybe dreaming out loud here, so trying to navigate that question into something more hopeful. Do you think there could be an interesting space or place or I don't know, like gathering for that, both in festivals but maybe also for institutions, where actually this, you know, bringing together people to talk about those collaborations? Because also how would you know that, well, this institution is interested in the same artist? Like, how are we going to find out where we can actually start those collaborations? So I'm just wondering what your view is on that.
Thank you, Eva. Your question actually touches upon something that allows me to make a reminder. We're launching a commoning network which will happen tomorrow afternoon, and is very much inspired by the encounters hosted by Art Film at Rotterdam, at the Rotterdam Film Festival, where people would come with, I'm producing this, I'm commissioning this, someone wants to join us. And we are hoping exactly that these very informal conversations that move people often to go and see biennials, to come and see, to go fairs, to network, and create a space where this network can exist in a sort of speed dating between people who are working across institutions in different places. So hopefully that will be delivered. And thank you. And thank you, everyone. Do join us tomorrow. We start at 10 a.m. with a super interesting conversation on the role of the digital, both as a place, both as a technology and a place to reconsider forms of ownership and circulation. And it will be followed by a very important conversation, likewise, on the role of collecting exactly as a form of paying attention, staying with works, and caring for them. And you have all the speakers, the incredible moderators who will be activating the whole session tomorrow. So do come back, and thank you. Thank you.